Are you somebody who tends to find themselves hopping from romantic relationship to romantic relationship, and you're pretty sure the next one is finally going to be that dream person who fulfills all your wishes and needs, and you're so concerned with meeting all the needs of your romantic partner and you feel like they never appreciate you enough, right? And so we're constantly just trying to live out these fantasies from all these terrific Disney movies about the person coming in and saving us. If this is you, come and join us in the back of the bar with all the other codependents. So what is codependency? Codependency is when we are overly reliant on another person to make us feel whole or to give us a sense of self, all right? So we kind of come in believing that we are not whole ourselves and that the next romantic partner, the next relationship, or even the next friendship will be that person that completes us. The problem is that we are searching outside ourselves to create this inner fulfillment that can only happen from within, right? And this puts a lot of strain in our relationships when we are expecting a romantic partner to meet and fulfill all our needs or all the holes that we feel from within. Now, we oftentimes become codependent because we had a childhood in which a parent, right, was overly reliant on us to meet their needs, right? We weren't able to individuate ourselves. We weren't able to kind of gain this autonomy. We went through an arrested development in a sense, all right? At some point in our childhood, we developed codependent patterns or codependent behaviors because we were told or shown that our worth and value was derived from how we could meet other people's needs, right? And so when this happens, we become susceptible to being taken advantage of or entering into abusive partnerships or relationships, or we enter into this kind of illusion that we are always being taken advantage of because we are always taking it upon ourselves to try to meet everyone else's needs when we're not even being asked to. So then we become resentful, right? Oftentimes when we are codependent, we are just trying to gain the love that we weren't able to receive from a specific parent in our relationships. But as I talked about, the problem with that is that it puts a lot of pressure on the relationship. It puts a lot of pressure on the other partner because it is not their responsibility to be that parent, to give us the love the parent never gave us. Parents were supposed to love us unconditionally. But relationships and love and relationship actually have more conditions than anything possibly ever could. So trying to give that inner child fantasy of the love from the parent through a relationship, which is what happens through codependency, sets the relationship up for failure. And we have an epidemic of codependency within our Western society. So what are our signs of codependency? Well, there's impaired self-esteem. Oftentimes when you're codependent, you naturally feel like you're a burden, right? You feel that your sense of self and your worth is derived from how you can meet the needs or wants of another person or partner. Oftentimes when we have this codependency patterns, we build a personality around perfectionism. We are overly critical on ourselves for making any type of mistake. We also romanticize relationships. There's an inability to be alone. We're constantly hopping from partner to partner, and there's this inner belief, as we talked about, that a partner can save, that we can save a partner, right? Or that they can save us and give us everything that we want, right? There's also excessive caretaking, fixing, and enabling. Look, looking after a partner when they're going through a difficult time, there's nothing wrong with that. But it comes to a point where we are building our identity and our sense of self around our ability to caretake, that it's not actually even always coming from a genuine place, right? We come in trying to fix people rather than allowing themselves to go through the difficulties themselves, or we enable the behavior because we want to look good, right? This is what happens when we're deriving our value from our partner's perception, okay? So this excessive caretaking, this ability to find like a broken puppy and fix them and get them back to health isn't always a healthy attitude, right? Because it's not necessarily always coming from a genuine place, especially in codependent patterns. Dysfunctional communication. When we derive our sense of self through other people, we don't want to upset them. So when we have concerns or when we have needs or when we need to voice our boundaries, people with codependency have difficulty communicating these things to their romantic partners or other people. They actually kind of expect their partner to mind read them, right? To just know, because you're my partner, you're supposed to save me, you're supposed to fix me, you should know what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm going through. And so because they're not able to openly communicate their feelings, their needs, their boundaries, then they just end up building greater resentment towards their partner. People who are codependent are oftentimes very reactive. Codependency oftentimes arises out of a lot of internalized shame, right? We believe that we are not inherently good enough in of ourselves, so that we have to erect a false self that is built upon meeting the needs of others, right? So when someone offers us constructive criticism or voices their concerns or their needs, we can become overly defensive. We can feel we are attacked, or we're just feeling, oh my God, we must be so bad. So if you find yourself being overly reactive to when anyone ever has just something to say that may not be in the most positive light, it's a symptom of codependency. Also, people who are codependent deeply want intimacy, but they're actually afraid to be intimate. It's kind of a paradox. But people develop codependent patterns because they were shown and told their true self wasn't enough when they were younger. So any thoughts or feeling, any negative emotions or feelings are to be avoided. Vulnerability is bad because remember, we're deriving our sense of self from other people or our partners. So we don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. But what happens is we don't end up exposing our true selves. We end up hiding our true selves, trying to create this ideal self to continually portray. And then once again, we grow up, we go into the relationship feeling nothing but resentment. Codependent relationships and patterns, unfortunately, are the pattern that breeds tons of resentment, where it's very unstable, and we end up staying in relationships that end up being unhealthy or not taking the corrective actions to make them healthy. So how do we heal codependency? I'm going to be honest with you guys, this is something I'm working through in this current moment as well. All right? Codependency is difficult to heal, because oftentimes it was in childhood that we had to build up this sense of self, this internal locus of control. Now we're trying to do it as adults. So the first step is abstinence. We have to untangle ourselves from other people, right? We have to, if there's emotional enmeshment within our relationships, we might need to take a step back from the relationship. Anything where we feel like we're absorbing other people's emotions or feelings, we may need to take a step back from. We have to untangle ourselves and just become an individual, autonomous person. Next, we need to feel into the darkness. Codependency happens because we feel empty on the inside. We feel this deep inner void because we weren't able to develop an internal sense of self growing up. And so we deflect into other people's needs, thoughts, emotions, and feelings to hide from this inner darkness. But the only way through this is into it. And so we have to feel how empty and alone we feel on the inside, right? And when we feel into those really uncomfortable, deep, dark, depressive feelings internally, then we also have to go into acknowledgement, acceptance. A lot of times, because we had so much resentment bred into our relationships due to the codependent patterns, we blamed the other person, or we overly shamed ourselves. But what we need to do is we need to own and accept our part in these relationships. We need to own and accept how possibly not voicing our needs or being overly reactive, right, or deriving our sense of self through our romantic partner caused the relationship to not work. We have to accept how we took part in the dysfunction of our relationships and friendships. Next, we have to learn ourselves. As children, we were constantly hyper aware of our external environment and how we needed to meet our parents' needs or someone else's needs. Now we need to figure out what our needs are. What are our values? What's important to us? Journaling can be very important in this aspect, right? It's really going within and figuring out what matters to you, finding that internal voice and listening to it and doing things that are just for you. And last but not least, and the hardest thing to do in the spiritual journey or path to healing, learning to love yourself. Begin to focus on self-care. Begin to focus on self-compassion. And if you have that negative inner critic constantly shaming you and telling you how bad you are, you now have to counter it. You now have to give yourself understanding and love, right? Accept your imperfections. Accept your mistakes instead of constantly shaming yourself for them, right? It's allowing yourself to not be perfect. When we're codependent, we oftentimes feel like we have to live up to this insane ideal self where we always can meet everyone's needs, feelings, and emotions, but that's not true. And we will make mistakes. And there are parts of us that aren't perfect. And it's learning to accept and love our imperfections that allows us to love ourselves. Thank you for watching this video on codependency. Please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I look forward to you watching more of my videos.